The Messerschmitt 262 was the first operational jet fighter in history. It is at the same time my absolutely favorite airplane from World War II. So imagine my excitement when I knew that a game was to be published just about this plane. Hello, this is Michel Leviathan-Sorbet and this is a new episode of Wojennik TV. The Messerschmitt 262, one of Hitler's Wunderwaffe, which appeared too late during the war to change its outcome, but without any doubt the first jet fighter used in a military conflict. A very interesting plane, one of my favorite plane of World War II. And as I said a few moments ago, when I heard that there were to be a game focused on this machine, I knew I had to play it. And today I'd like to present you the review of this title. The game is called 262 and it was published by Taktyka Strategia in 2020. The author of this title is Wojciech Zalewski. This is a title for 1 to 2 players aged 7 or higher, and the time of play will be somewhere around 30 to 45 minutes. This is a game which will enable us to recreate aerial dogfights between the 262 and different types of allied aircrafts. In the game we will find 4 different scenarios, each one a little bit different, using also different airplanes. Today I'd like to show you how the elements of this game look, then I'd like to briefly explain what are its basic mechanics, and at the end my final recommendation, the strong points of this title, but also the weaker ones. So let's check it out. Here is 262 from the Polish company Taktyka i Strategia. A fantastic box cover depicting a Messerschmitt 262 fully operational and during a flight. Now this is a magnetic box. This is something quite new from Taktyka i Strategia, used from some time for its new releases. It's quite practical, as you can see it is closed from the side. The only thing which might be a problem is the fact that in the game we receive a sheet with different scenarios. Now this sheet is quite large and it doesn't actually fit to the bottom of the box, so it's quite difficult to take it out from it, but it's not a major problem. Now among the components that we received inside this elegant box, we have two maps. Those are paper maps, and map A depicts the sky. This is where most of the dogfights will be taking place. As you can see, we have some clouds. This is a map with a hexagonal grid in order to place and move units. But apart from the visual aspect, those clouds have no impact on gameplay. The second map is a map also with a hexagonal grid, but this time it represents the surface of the Earth, and it represents a part of Germany where a big city is being located, and this is meant to be Berlin. Because in the game we have a scenario which will enable us to play a raid against the city and the German defense against this raid. So we have here the city, we have some roads, we have some rivers, we have some forests, but they have no impact on gameplay. Those hexes will be used not only by aircraft flying above terrain level, but they will also be used for flag, because we have 6 flag counters in the game, and they of course will be placed on the ground, not in the air. So when we speak of counters, we receive 6 types of counters, and 5 of them will represent planes, and one will represent anti-aircraft guns. So we will be having flag counters. Here they are. We receive one with a 2, 3 with a 1, and 2 blank ones, because those counters will be placed in such a way that the opponent doesn't know what they represent, and they will be used in order to try to shoot down enemy planes. We have 3 kinds of fighters. We have only one German type of plane, and this will be, of course, the Messerschmitt 262. As you can see, those counters are round. They are double-sided, depicting a fully operational jet and a damaged plane, as you can see, with some smoke coming from one of its engines. Those counters represent a single plane, and the only number which is printed on this counter is the movement factor of the plane. So a Messerschmitt has a speed of 5. Compared to Allied units, it is faster, but not a lot faster, because, for instance, the Spitfires have a movement factor of 4. Now, a reduced unit, so a damaged plane, will have its movement factor reduced. It will be 4 when it comes to the Messerschmitt. Now, as you can see, the counters are different because the background is different. It is a plane on a blue background, on a whitish background. It's also somewhat the representation of the sky through which the plane is flying. The colors of the different planes is also different. For instance, here you have a grayish one, and the other one is dark green or olive green. But there is no difference between those counters in terms of gameplay. The Allied units consist of 4 types of counters. We have 2 types of fighters, and we have 2 types of bombers. Now, those units are not described in the rules, so we do not actually know what kind of planes they represent. Those information are included somewhere in the scenarios where we can guess that, for instance, this counter represents a Liberator bomber, this one will be a B-17 bomber. Now, as you can see, the fighters and the bombers are different because, firstly, the fighters are, of course, much faster. They have a greater movement factor, a bigger movement factor. But secondly, the fighters have also a small indication what is considered to be their front. And it is important because fighters can attack only targets which are located in their front arc. So those fighters, their facing will be important during gameplay in order to see what targets they can attack. Bombers can attack each target which is around them, which is quite logical because bombers had multiple machine guns installed, they had multiple gunners on board, and they were able to target different planes approaching from different sides. As well as it was the case of the Messerschmitt, those counters are double-sided, depicting a damaged plane. So, what are the basic mechanics of the game? We receive a single die which will be used in order to resolve combat, because combat will be resolved thanks to using die rolls. We receive the rules, which are really pretty straightforward. They are 4 pages long, but they are written in 4 languages. So in fact, the rules are only presented on 1 page. So we have the rules in English, we have the Polish version, the Spanish one, and the Catalan one. Unfortunately, those rules are quite ambiguous. And furthermore, the English version of the rules differs from the Polish one. So it's quite difficult to tell which one should be used. In my opinion, the English one is much more precise, it's a little bit more precise from the Polish one, and it has some elements which are totally omitted from the Polish version. I absolutely do not know why. The Spanish and the Catalan version, well, I do not know exactly how they are written compared to the English and the Polish version, but I know that they are written with they are written correctly in terms of language used. I asked a fellow Spanish gamer to check them out, and he said they are quite good. They are quite good, and they are well laid. No problems in terms of language used or bizarre language grammar structures. We receive the scenario sheet. As I said earlier, this is the one which is a little bit larger from the bottom of the box, but it has 8 scenarios. As you can see, the first one is Berlin, then we have a dogfight, we have a scenario in which we will be trying to break through a defensive structure, defending bombers, defense stream. Then we'll have also a scenario called the blue line. And those 4 scenarios, as you can see, each have a description in Polish, because this is the Polish version of the game, which tells us what is the settings, what is the tactical situation. It has also the turn track count, the turn record track. So this turn record track is on a different sheet. It is not a separate sheet, it is inside the scenarios. Inside this sheet we have also information about what types of aircraft we will be using and on which turn those aircraft will enter play. We have also the rules governing victory points, and mostly victory points will be granted for destroying enemy aircraft, but sometimes it will also be different things. For instance, we'll receive also points for aircraft which reach Berlin during a raid, or for instance there will be also points granted for leaving the map through one of its edges. We have also some information concerning how to adapt the game to solitaire play, but after reading those recommendations I must say that they are not very precise and they do not give much insight on how to play this game solitaire. But this is because this game is so easy and it has such accessible mechanics, it's very easy to be played solo. Now, how those mechanics look? Firstly, the game will be played in a series of activations, in a series of turns, and during each activation the player who's the active player will be able to activate all his aircraft present on the map. And when a unit is activated, when an airplane is activated, you do have to move it using its full movement capacity. So if you have, for instance, a Spitfire with 4 movement points, you have to move it 4 hexes. And movement is extremely simple. You can fly straight ahead, or you can turn up to 60 degrees when spending a movement point. So for instance, we could move 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we could end our activation on such a hex. If during movement we encounter an enemy aircraft, we can attack it. Attacking is extremely simple because we will make a die roll. In order to score a hit, we have to obtain a result of 3 or less. If our fighter is damaged, our firepower is reduced to 2, so we have to roll a 1 or a 2. If we obtain a hit, the target is flipped and it becomes damaged. If it already was damaged, it is shot down and the counter is removed from the game. During our movement, we can encounter multiple targets, so we have several. We can attack one and a second one during our movement. When we pass through a hex on which another plane is located, we have to check if there is a collision. We will roll twice our dice, and if at both times we obtain a 6, both planes will be destroyed due to a collision. So we will be very often rolling 2 dice, but we have only 1 die in the game. It's pretty sad, because although all wargamers have tons of dice, and this won't be an issue, if the game has some mechanics which require us to roll twice a die, we should get 2 dice in order to be able to roll instantly 2 dice and not to make rerolls. Bombers attack a little bit differently, because as I said earlier, at the moment that a fighter enters a hex surrounding our bomber, it can attack. Their firepower is also reduced, but they can attack a fighter coming from any direction. So after activating all our units, after making our attacks, it's up to our opponent to activate his own units, to make his own attacks. And that's pretty it when it comes to the rules, the basic rules of 262. It's a very straightforward game. It's a very simple game. There are some rules governing, for instance, what happens if after the end of movement two bombers are in the same hex, or what happens if we have two bombers on adjacent hexes. But those are really very easy additional rules, which, as I said earlier, are all written only on one sheet. And that's it. So now I'd like to invite you to the conclusion. I'd like to tell you a few words about what I think about this game, what I think are its strong, but also what are the weaker points of this design. 262 is a game that I really wanted to try. When I first heard that there was to be a game covering the aerial dogfights in which the Messerschmitt 262 took part, I was very excited. I wanted this game to be released. I wanted to test it. So after the game was eventually released, I played it very heavily from the beginning and I had very mixed opinions. But first, let me tell you what I liked in this design. Firstly, I think it's just a good thing for this machine to be at last the main star of a separate game. We had several titles in which we had the 262. For instance, we had Night Fighter, in which we could fly the 262. We had Target for Today, in which we sometimes were attacked by Messerschmitt's 262. But up until now, we didn't have a game which was strictly focused on this machine, as far as I know. And the sole idea to create a game about this machine is, in my opinion, a good idea, because it is an extremely interesting aircraft which deserves to have its own game. Secondly, I like the artwork on the box cover, because when I received this game, when I have seen this magnificent picture, I was extremely, even more excited than before, and I really wanted to like this game. I really wanted to play it. The third thing which can be a strong point of this game is the fact that this game is really simple. It is a game which you can use when introducing your kid to wargaming, because it is a game which will be suitable for players aged 7 or even maybe younger. So you can very easily grab this game and play it with your son, with your daughter, if you are looking for something extremely straightforward and very simple. At the same time, you can use it as an educational tool if you know something about the Messerschmitt 262 and about aerial combats during World War II, because in the game you won't find anything that could enhance your playing experience or maybe give you a better insight on how 262s were operationally used, what type of machine it was, how aerial dogfights and aerial combat looked like during World War II. You'll have to gather those information by yourself. So now passing to the things that I do not like in this game. Firstly, I'd say that the game has extremely bad written rules. And I'm rarely saying this, but those rules are just trash. It's terrible. And it's very bizarre, because those rules are, as I said a few moments ago, absolutely very straightforward, extremely simplified. And I do not see how you can publish a game with such simple rules at the same time with such ambiguous or even badly written rulebook. The rulebook has one page, only one page. How can you print a game with badly written rules which are printed on one page? For me, it's just unbelievable, but it did happen in this case. Those rules have blank spots, so you do not know how to interpret some things. You have errors, you have typos. The Polish version differs from the English one, so you'll have two different games if played according to the Polish rules or according to the English rules. If the Spanish and Catalan rules, which I am not aware of because I do not speak Spanish, I do not speak Catalan, are written in the same way, you have 4 variations of this game, because maybe they are different, I do not know. But playing by the rules is just very, very problematic. You will have to make some home rules and decide on how to play some things. For instance, how to play half hexes. Can you use them or you cannot? Well, I judged I can. What happens if you leave the playing area, the map board? It's not in the rules. You have rules governing collisions, which might happen, but those rules are differently written in Polish and in the English rulebook. It's terrible. It's sad because it was a thing which could have easily been done perfectly fine. Those rules are really easy to explain, and they should be easy to be written, but they weren't. The second thing is you receive those 4 scenarios, and here again a few problems arise. The first one, again, those rules are written badly. Those scenarios are written badly. The introduction is terrible. I had absolutely no feeling of reading an interesting, entertaining story about the setting. They are science fiction because none of the scenarios represents any of the historical dogfights or actions in which the Messerschmitts took place. We have some very bizarre situations in which we have, say, 12 Messerschmitts against 24 Spitfires and over Allied aircraft. But did such a fight really occurred? We do not know. We do not have absolutely any explanation, and those scenarios have typos, grammar issues, not to say we have errors governing, for instance, such basic information as how to calculate victory points. We have, for instance, a phrase saying that you, as the German player, gain points by damaging German aircraft. Okay, so I'll just fly onto an enemy formation and let them shoot at me. I'll gain some points. Well, that's an obvious error, but we have really a lot of them in those scenarios. So not only we have errors in those scenarios, they are not interesting in terms of the history presented. They are totally historically inaccurate. Then I think that the quality of the elements, apart from the rulebook and apart from the scenarios, is not of a very high standard. The counters, they are rather thick, but they were printed on with such a layer that some of them already start to unglue. So I had to glue 2 or 3 of them already. Then we have the maps, which represent Berlin and represent a part of a sky somewhere over Germany. The first one, so the map with the sky, there where we have clouds, we cannot see the lines between hexes. So if you're in the middle of a cloud, you'll have to guess if you're still on such a hex, or are you elsewhere. In the Berlin map, okay, it's maybe a prettier map, but now we have another issue. In the scenarios which include raids against Berlin, we have information governing, for instance, that the Allies get points if they reach Berlin. But where is Berlin? Okay, I know it's the big city, but what are its boundaries? Does this small part somewhere to the north, is this small part to the north already part of Berlin, or is it its suburbs and it isn't considered the city itself? We do not know. We have to guess it, we have to home rule it, and again the rules are not helping us in doing so. Then we have the differences between the aircrafts. What are the differences? The movement factors and the silhouette, or rather the the depiction of the plane on the counter. And that's it. So we get two different allied bombers and two allied fighters. What is the difference between them? None. What is the difference between the Messerschmitt and the allied fighters? Only 1 point of movement. The Messerschmitt is a little bit faster. Does it make the game does it make the playing experience from the German and from the allied side different? Totally not. Because not only you have this very small difference between those aircraft, you have to use all your movement factors. So you cannot, for instance, use 3 movement factors. You have to use your full speed. Why? I do not know. Because you maybe could have included a rule that you can use not less than 2 or 3 movement points. But here I understand why the jet fighters have to move so quickly. Okay, that's maybe reasonable, but why the piston aircraft have to move up to their full movement capacity? That's a mystery. I do not know. Then again, we have B-17s and Liberators, which we know only because we have read the information in the scenarios, and we have guessed that those are those counters. But they have absolutely no differences. So their firepower, their equipment, their crew members, the quality of their crew members, etc. are all the same. So why bother and make 2 different types of aircraft? I do not know. Then when we have the combat resolution system, it's just die rolling, because you have only 1 die, even though we have a mechanic which requires us to roll 2 dice. So you have to re-roll the dice that you have rolled. Well, adding a second dice wouldn't be a great problem, but still you do not have it in this game. You have 1 and only 1 die, which you will be constantly rolling and passing to your opponent when he will be constantly rolling your own die. Then again, what is your impact on the final result of a dogfight? Well, you can choose how to approach an airplane and roll the die, and that's it. No modifiers, no strategy in it, no tactical approach. It's just trying to roll lucky and avoiding bad rolls from your opponent, without having an impact, without having an influence on the final outcome. So this is just about dice rolling. This is just about dice rolling in some sci-fi setting with very badly written rules and with bizarre scenarios. So concluding, would I recommend this game? I'd say absolutely no. In my opinion, this is a very bad game, and I am terribly disappointed because I was really super excited. I wanted to like this game. I wanted to enjoy playing a game focused on the Messerschmitt 262. And imagine my disappointment. This is a very bad game, and if you are looking for an interesting game about the Messerschmitt 262, you'll have to search elsewhere. You can, for instance, try Night Fighter. You do have the 262, you can fly it. It's not a very enjoyable experience, but it is far much better than this what you get from 262. So unless you are a total geek of this machine, unless you are looking for something super easy and at the same time you can forget all those problems with this game, because you want just to grab a game in which you will have some die rolling with, for instance, your 6-year-old son, this is maybe a good idea. But if you want to introduce him to wargaming, you should try something much more interesting than this. So, concluding for the final time, this is not a good game. I do not recommend it. I'm extremely disappointed both by the quality of the components as well as by the gameplay. It should have been done far better. It could have been done better, and it could have been a very interesting game, but unfortunately it is not. This was the review of 262 by Taktyka and Strategia. Thank you a lot for watching this video. I invite you also to our other movies on our channel. Take a look also at our Facebook and Instagram accounts. And if you want to support our channel, you can become one of our patrons. Take a look at our Patronite account. Have a great day and see you next time.